Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back in another video. Hope you're doing well wherever you are, and I'd love to read your comments as ever. I know I always say that, but few people seem to comment. But yeah, if you do want to comment anything you want, any constructive criticism, feedback, positive comments to encourage me or whatever, I'm doing this one hopefully not in list form so much like I normally do, like parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, but just sort of off the cuff or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I'll try not to go off topic too much. But yeah, I often say in these videos, you probably can tell, you'll probably see why I do things in list form, because my mind goes all over the place. But yeah, I wanted to talk about some of the many thoughts, or at least some of the thoughts on my mind. But yeah, I know I often take on too much. But anyway, I suppose it kind of is in list form, but kind of not, if you know what I mean. It's not like my usual 4-point list videos or whatever. But anywho, yeah, so getting to the point. One of the things I was thinking about recently was the Winrush scandal here in the UK. By the way, normally I like to get the worst out of the way, and there was for me anyway, there was a terrible storm, because I can't stand storms. I don't like to hate anyone or anything, but I really don't like storms. I'll say borders on hate probably, but I get a bit chicken when it comes to storms. So yeah, so far it seems to have passed. So hopefully it will stay away for a while, for as long as possible, preferably forever. But yeah, and then we'll have just blue skies and sun forever, but maybe not. I may dream. But anyway, getting back to the point. Recently, they were discussing the Winrush scandal. I don't know if it's like the anniversary of the Winrush or something like that, because I forget what date it was on or whatnot. But there seems to be quite a few discussions about the Winrush, and whether, I don't know if it was a lawyer who's rejigging the campaign or whatever, like bringing it back up to ask whether they have got the compensation that they were owed due to the scandal that happened with the Winrush. For those who are overseas or who might be ignorant to it for whatever reason, the Winrush scandal was when the Winrush generation came on a boat called the Empire Winrush, and they were brought over from the Caribbean, members of the Commonwealth. I think pretty much all of them were from the Caribbean, if I'm not mistaken. Anyone can probably comment in the comment section if you know any more than I do, because I'm not an expert on this situation. But yeah, they came to fill jobs which were needed during the Second World War, if I'm not mistaken. Recently they were treated terribly bad. Like, well, I suppose it's the offspring of the Windrush, the people who came on the Windrush all those years ago. But yeah, many of them passed away or had so many problems. Some people even think some of them might have died from a broken heart. Like people say, people die from a broken heart and things like that. So a lot of terrible stuff happened. And I wonder if they've been given reparations or compensation or whatever. And I think, in my humble opinion, these are all my personal opinions, so please feel free to disagree if you like. As a libertarian, I love freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and all that kind of thing. The question is, where do you draw the line, I suppose? But I'd love to, on that note, I'd love to be able to call a spade and a brush, and a broom, basically to say what I see. If I had a spine to do so, I'd love to have a better spine. And what I mean by that, as I say what I see in the politest possible way. I hope to do so in a polite way. My dilemma is, how do I do so? How do I be assertive and say my honest opinions without offending anyone? And that's the challenge. Anyway, sorry, I should stick to one thing at a time because my mind's gone off in tangents. But I was thinking that maybe people of colour generally, not even just the Windrush, should be given like tax exemptions for historical oppression. And maybe people of colour could donate to, including mixed race people like myself, could donate to our ancestral homeland. Mixed race people like myself could donate to like our POC, person of colour side, or whatever, like to Asia or Africa, Asian and African nations, or like basically where our ancestors from, maybe, or even Irish people could have that compensation to give back to Ireland. I'd love for Celtic, on that note, to have compensation like for what happened to the Irish, which could go, as it's a club that represents the Irish, and possibly Hibs in Edinburgh, as I call it. But anyway, getting back to the topic at hand, I thought of talking about the Windrush scandal, and like, yeah, I think one thing could be giving them tax exemptions, tax cuts or breaks. They could be exempted from a lot of taxes and pay the least amount of tax possible, preferably zero. That's supposed to be a zero, sorry. Try not to do the large sound, but anyway, yeah, sorry. Yeah, people of colour generally, perhaps, or minorities, maybe even disadvantaged groups like women or disabled people or whatever, people who have suffered from historical disadvantage. I'd love to hear what you think about that. But as a libertarian, I'd love to see the lowest amount of taxes possible, even though I'm a dole weller, which is one of the reasons why I made this YouTube video, to become more independent and to not force anyone to give me money or whatever. Which I suppose brings me on to another point. I was going to go onto my thoughts on the Eurasian community, but I'd love to hear what you think. Sorry, I'll leave the Winrush thing on. I'd love to know what you think should be the right amount of reparations, compensation for the Winrush generation. Should they get money for like funding their businesses? Should they have their mortgages paid for to compensate for what they went through? Should they just have loads of funding? How much should be the right amount or whatever? I'd love to know different opinion or read different opinions on that. All opinions accepted from me anyway. I don't know if YouTube will accept them, but anywho, yeah. So I'm going to go on to the next point about talking about libertarianism and freedom and not wanting to force people to do things they don't want to do, which is a bit of a dilemma of mine as a dole weller who relies on tax money at the moment, which is again one of the reasons why I set me on YouTube. I'll try and keep this a bit short and sweet, but I suppose I'm probably failing at that. But anyway, on that note, when it comes to learning disabled, neurodiverse, special needs, neurodivergent, whatever you want to call it us, I think it'd be cool if we had our own independent schools or educational establishments where like we were mentored, taught, trained, and that kind of thing all around the world by our own people who have been successful, like dyslexic entrepreneurs, ADHD entrepreneurs, and that kind of thing. And it would be funded, if it was up to me, by people who choose to fund it, not those who are forced. So it wouldn't be through taxes or stuff like that, which to me are like obviously forced because no one actually chooses. So for me, it's like tax is a legal form of robbery, in my opinion, same as colonization, invading other countries and things like that, in my opinion. Again, you can feel free to disagree with that if you want, but controversial views, I know. But again, I love to call a spade and say it as it is, basically. But yeah, I think it'd be cool if we set up our own independent schools, so that we don't have to force anyone to help us if they don't want to. We don't force the taxpayers to pay for extra education. We don't have to force teachers to take on extra training or do things they don't want to do, or things like, or the academic system to change from its rigid curriculum sort of style way. We could make our own sort of curriculum, which is geared towards our own strengths, where we learn to compensate for our weaknesses, work around our weaknesses, and maybe improve upon our weaknesses as well in the future. But we get the confidence and things like that, and we could learn things about business, politics, and different things. I know probably not all learning disabled people are going to be entrepreneurs necessarily, but on that note, however, a second thing I'd love for learning disabled people to do is, I know I said I wasn't going to do it in list form, but a second thing I would love for, I know I've done a list within a list there, but a second thing I'd love for learning disabled or neurodiverse, special needs, or whatever you want to call us, people to do is like set up a business where we network together. Maybe we could even buy things together in bulk, so we get discounts like 10% or even more discounts on our shopping, on our general bills and things like that, by being a consumer, a cooperative sort of thing, like Groupon, a bit like Groupon perhaps, or very much like Groupon, although I don't 100% know how that works. But yeah, so but also where we could invest together, teach each other things, and share ideas and things like that. I know some people say two heads are better than one. Some people might argue that we would argue with each other and not get much done, or we would not be able to agree or to disagree. But maybe we could take more risks having more money, so we could try projects that we wouldn't otherwise try if we didn't have the funds to do it or the confidence to do it or whatnot, especially the confidence, of course. But yeah, so if we invest together, buy together, get deals, things in bulk, be able to buy and sell things cheap and things like that. And another thing is, if we support each other, talking about careers generally on social media, perhaps for those people with learning disabilities like myself who might not be confident enough to set up our own businesses, maybe we could at least have some form of social media where we help each other, encourage each other and things like that, although I suppose not everyone's confident enough to go on camera either. But yeah, maybe we could encourage each other and that kind of thing, so we could earn our own money. We wouldn't have to rely on benefits. We wouldn't have to beg for jobs. We wouldn't have to go to employers who don't want to give us jobs, because we could create our own jobs. I suppose it's sticking two things up to them. I'm just kidding. But on a serious note, yeah, we wouldn't have to force anyone or even be bitter. I mean, that's their choice. I won't employ me either, to be absolutely honest. I don't know if I should say that. But I know not all neurodiverse people are the same, to be fair. But yeah, anyway, moving on. So yeah, I think that covered all my points for Eurasians. Yeah, so I mean for learning disabled people. So setting up our own businesses, investing together, buying in bulk, getting discounts by buying in bulk, like Groupon and things like that. Having our own version of that, and maybe even working with other people who have things in common with, like olive skin people, mixed race people, and that kind of thing. But yeah, buying things together so we reduce prices, because companies will hopefully want to give us the best possible deal to get our custom when we join together. And remembering our chain of thought. But yeah, also, as I say, supporting each other on social media and having our own schools and things like that. Again, I'd love to hear your opinions on things like that. I know I do waffle. Moving on, as I say, to Eurasians, Anglo-Indians and other Eurasians like Kristangs, I think they're called, and Indos from Indonesia, Kristangs from Malaysia and Singapore, and Indos from Indonesia. I would love for Eurasians together to network together and do a whole load of things, which I hope to make a video for, possibly on Mixed Race Mondays sometimes. But one of the things I would love for us to do, to put it simply, is I would love for us to work to support and benefit Malaysians, or Malaysia generally, India, Indonesia, and Singapore especially, and maybe even South Africa. The reason why I chose those 4 or 5 countries is because, especially the Asian ones, they have large Eurasian populations, and they've given us support. So it's kind of like saying thanks to them and hopefully encouraging them to continue to support in the future, because if you have like appreciation, then I think it encourages people to support you more. Yeah, it's because they were colonized as well. But yeah, so it's to say thanks and also to reparate them, compensate them for what they went through in history. And yeah, South Africa went through apartheid as well. So I'd love to support people of colour across South Africa, and possibly those who are willing to integrate as well. But yeah, so with Eurasians, I would love us to support the security as well as the financial benefits and keep all possible citizens as safe as possible in and across Malaysia, India, Indonesia, and Singapore, or Asia generally, and Africa generally, but especially those 4 countries, and possibly South Africa as well, like benefiting their economies and also keeping their citizens safe. Possibly Eurasians who are more brave. I don't think we should join militaries, in my opinion, mixed race people, including Eurasians, but maybe even other mixed race people in support of their fellow mixed race people, their fellow mutts. Just kidding. But yeah, maybe they could, in solidarity with us, also look at how they could help us. And so yeah, sharing ideas, and maybe Eurasians who are good at technology could look at potential threats online or things like, and keep citizens, so those countries, safe from potential invasions or from threats like terrorism, and cut crimes in those countries, and protect all, especially law-abiding citizens in those countries, in those 4 or 5 countries, by cooperating together and also cooperating with people in those countries. And I suppose a few Anglo-Indians are in the Indian military, and possibly some are even in the Pakistani military, which is a bit of a conflict. I suppose we'd have to fight each other. But I don't think we should support, if we do that, obviously, but I don't think we should join militaries, as I say, to be honest. I think instead we should work on like counter-terrorism, internal security, possibly working as armed police and making sure that we prevent any terrorism and things like that, and other threats, and we keep those citizens in those countries safe from bombs, or even, if heaven forbid, natural disasters happen in those countries, we could look at, for the ones who are Eurasians who are braver than myself, could look at how they could be brave enough, maybe even to take a risk and put themselves in a harm's way to, if necessary, obviously not if not necessary, but if necessary, to protect people from those countries and work with people from those countries, support entrepreneurs from those countries, encourage politicians from those countries to work together and things like that. So I think that would be pretty cool. So yeah, I hope that made sense, and I welcome any questions on that, and I hope my fellow Eurasians will get involved. But yeah, I'm talking about the mixed race group, possibly Eurasian nations as well could do so, or mixed race people generally as well, including other mixed race groups, even Malaysians, part black and part Asians, as well as Eurasians. But yeah, I'd love to hear what your thoughts on all of these points. Another thing I was thinking about, actually, I might wrap it up on this because I know this video is 14 minutes long approximately. It's probably going to be just over that. But yeah, I was thinking like the deal I talked about recently, 1, 2, or for 1, or share for share. Maybe I should have got that out of the way first. I thought if I had the confidence, again, talking about being confident enough to speak my mind, spade a spade, so to speak, in the politest possible way, basically say what I see, say things as they are, or as I see them, at least in my personal opinion, and give my honest opinions. If I could do a deal with my family, especially my mum, I would say, like, I don't do many things, but I take out the rubbish, the trash, or whatever, the recycling, the rubbish, and also I empty and fill the dishwasher. Some people might say big bin, but the reason why I do those is because I get to live at home, I get a roof over my head and things like that, and also I get fed, I get things to eat and drink loads of tea, as you can tell from my other videos, and also yeah, so that's why I do those things. But I was thinking, for each room I get to I hoover, if I could do that deal, I would say I would get to have a notebook or a piece of paper or even receipt or envelope that I like to write on, because I like to write on everything, everywhere, all the time, because I have this mad habit of hoarding things, admittedly. But I know I shouldn't do so without permission. But if I could, I'd say for each room I get to hoover, I think my family should support my project. Either if that's giving me a piece of paper to write on, or one of my 5 causes, which I haven't talked about: supporting Italian football, Celtic, Libertarianism, former colonies or people from former colonies, and so-called tackling poverty and supporting animal rights or things like that. So I think, yeah, so if I could do a deal for each room I hoover or each task I do, each time they call me, they would support one of those causes, or even my works generally, or give me a notebook that I could write on with my mad ideas or things like that, or help me to share stationery with people with learning disabilities, especially in those countries I talked about, which I hope, on that note, to specifically have like special needs academies for training them in business and STEM and areas like that for people with dyslexia, ADHD, and autism and things like that in those countries, and South Africa and across Africa as well. And I am out. Peace and love.